3, 2, 1.
Here we go! That was my foot.
Linsay.
Mark.
Linsay Rousseau.
Yes, that is I.
With the accent over the U.
Yeah.
How you doing today?
I'm good. I was fully engrossed in The Essentials of Living Aboard a Boat by Mark Nichols, because as I was saying earlier, it's my dream to have a recording studio on a boat. So.
Yeah. It's not as easy as you think it is.
You know, I worry about like the movement, and obviously you could only record when the boat's shut off, but I feel like there's a way to do it, because then it's like I could just go anywhere.
There is. I had a full setup in my boat.
Well, I do voiceover, so I don't think I probably need as much equipment as you have, but yeah, good to know. Be good to know.
When the metal pieces are banging off the halyard, ding, ding.
That's when you get a really good, like, plug-in filter to just like record that frequency and just be able to cut it.
This episode is sponsored by Izotope. Izotope.
Big fans.
Identifying and eliminating certain frequencies.
Yeah. Oh, and for all you people who do podcasting and voiceover, the declicker has saved me so much time in editing. So much time.
We want to be careful, though, because we want to give them a claim, but we're also fighting for sponsorship. We don't want to give too much away for free,
This is true, yeah.
But the spectral removal tool thing.
The dialogue denoiser, all amazing features.
Super cool.
Yeah.
So welcome to this episode of The Studio Life, where we talk about all things studio.
Yes.
And today I wanted to talk about the democratization of technology.
Man, that's a TED Talk right there, right? Democratization. It's really interesting because it applies across a whole swath of platforms. Obviously you talk to a lot of recording engineers, and I actually literally just had this conversation with someone the other day about voiceover, and I've heard other people say, oh, you got to get this piece of equipment and this piece of equipment, and no, you got to have the space. Like, as long as you've got a finely tuned space, which could be anywhere, you've got a studio. And
that's right.
Same thing, cost of technology, cost of equipment. We were talking about motion capture earlier. Things have gotten so much more affordable that you can use what was previously unattainable equipment and software as an indie developer, an indie filmmaker, and
that's right.
It's really opened up a lot of doors to people.
What's interesting, I think, is that we've always thought technology was giving the little guy too much opportunity.
Don't tell that to Disney.
We always wanted to feel like our investments were going to make us exclusive.
Right, because if you want this, you have to come to us,
Somehow, if you bought that camera, you were able to do this, but if you bought any other camera,
yes,
you weren't.
Exactly. And now you have people winning awards for shooting films on iPhones.
Yeah. On iPhones.
Yeah.
Fucking iPhones.
Right? Who knew you could make a movie with an iPhone?
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
I just got the latest one, the 13 Pro. I won't lie. I stopped using I had a Sony, whatever for my self-tapes. I'm using my iPhone now. Even the audio quality is good.
Yeah, but
it's not Manhattan Beach Studios where you can get all of your full-service studio needs done.
It's not the Sennheiser MKH50.
No. I do have, in my home studio, I do have my Sennheiser 416 and my Neumann 2 LM103.
Sure.
So, yeah, I do have standards. Yeah.
That's right. So, the iPhone, when we should make this clear, is not Netflix approved.
No, it is not.
So, you're still supposed to buy something that costs about 100 times the price.
And I did hear, and quote me if I'm wrong, I did hear that Netflix had like a list of it was either Netflix or Amazon had a list of requirements of, if you send them a film, it has to be shot, this quality, I think one of the studios was even requiring things being shot in 4K now. It's like, don't send us anything if it's not shot in 4K.
Yeah, and I actually think it's if they are doing the production.
Oh, maybe. Okay.
That and there are all kinds of exceptions for if a particular shot needed a camera that's not on their approved list, even if it's a Netflix production.
Right.
But we've always thought that technology being given to the little guy meant that somehow every professional was going to be put out of business. So that's never really been the case.
Yeah.
But I remember also when the word processor came out, when everybody, I was a lawyer at the time, and they gave everybody computers with with Word Perfect.
Oh man, yeah.
And the feeling was, well, everyone's going to be an author. And it turned out the people who are authors are the people who are born to be authors, not the people
Well,
who happen to have a computer.
exactly. It's like you can have the most expensive technology in the world, but if you don't have the talent or the skills to utilize that technology, then doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I mean, I know people that have like $10,000 whisper rooms, but they're brand new to the industry and they thought just buying all this expensive equipment was going to get them work. And it's like the first couple of years of my voiceover career, I literally was living in Berkeley in this tiny 1-bedroom apartment. I had a sliding door closet, which I went to a salvage yard and bought these outdoor shutters, put carpet remnants on it, set up like foam padding on the inside, had to wait when they weren't using the bathroom because it was on up against, my studio, and was using a Rode NT1A, and I recorded some big projects from there. And so I've had fun talks with people about like, dude, you can build a studio on a budget if you need to.
That's right.
But you got to have those skills. And then when you have, you work your way up the career and you can get the more expensive stuff, you're also at a point in your career when you actually know how to utilize that equipment and make it sound the best it is. But yeah, you need to, like you said, if you're a writer, you can write by hand and it's going to be amazing.
Right.
If you've got Word Perfect or what is Office now, it's like, well, if you're still writing, I don't know, cheesy limericks or whatever, it's not going to be the same.
That's right. Well, I think people who are born to do it, do it.
100%.
Now,
artists are artists.
One of the, but I feel like the world of technology has made some sudden, very interesting shifts lately. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you. Previously, in other eras, we took things that required a recording studio. I was in the recording studio for some massive projects that probably could not have easily been done in a smaller room, but it turns out everything can be done in a smaller room. But here we are now with a shift that's causing some things that really could have only been done in a massive multi-million-dollar facility. And for the very first time, we're allowing people to do that in very, very small spaces with very minimal gear. And in this particular case, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what's going on in the field of motion capture.
Absolutely.
And why it is not a topic just for $100 million films. Why it's actually important now for all of us to be talking about what this technology is allowing.
Definitely.
So here we're talking about the unities and things like that. What's going on? What is this shift that's taking this thing that was out there before?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously when you say motion capture, people automatically think, Lord of the Rings, Gollum. They think James Cameron Avatar, these multi-million, I don't know what James Cameron's budget, could be in the billions for all I know, franchises, and the suits with the ping pong balls in these massive football field size rooms with all the cameras around. And that absolutely is still the case for, like James Cameron, he's got underwater motion capture going on for the latest Avatar. He's built entire motion capture cities, which, that's what you can do when you have millions and millions of dollars. But the technology has advanced so much in the past 20 years that you have companies like Noidum International, which is an inertial motion capture company, though they do now have an optical inertial hybrid. But their original baseline suit that came with full inertial tracking with finger tracking, I think the baseline original price was $2,500. So, and they had special packages for indie developers, like Unreal and Unity, which are a lot of the programs used in motion capture. They also have like indie developer packages. So now all of a sudden, whereas before you're like, oh, well, I'm not Lord of the Rings, I can't use this. Now you've got, we would have indie developers coming into our studio and would be like, yeah, I prevised this scene in my bedroom. And, once you learn how to run this equipment and make sure there's nothing metal to mess with the orientation. All of a sudden you've got this technology that was previously unattainable now available to your indie game developers, your indie filmmakers, and you can do a lot more with it. And, from the viewer side of things, you've noticed like, well, now you're seeing animated motion capture characters in commercials and other things like that, because it is so much more affordable to do it. And now those giant optical stages, you've got stages now that only need 8 cameras, and you've got magnetic tracking. Sony Culver City has a new virtual stage that's got optical and inertial and magnetic. It's one of the most high-speed stages I've ever seen. And then you pair that with like photogrammetry and the new LED stages, which are also becoming much more affordable. All of a sudden, if you're an indie filmmaker and you're like, oh, I don't have the budget to fly to Morocco and China and, Germany to film this. Well, you get yourself an LED stage and a motion capture stage. All of a sudden, you're able to be wherever you want to be. And then you bring in the virtual cam with it, and you're able to see, or like we were talking about earlier, the Oculus VR headsets. All of a sudden, you're able to see a live stream render of what that scene looks like, which helps the actors. Ian McKellen is very famous for saying, I didn't get into acting to play Gandalf and sit on a green screen. Well, now with your virtual cams and Motion Builder and these, the Ocular VR headsets, the actor's not getting the feel or getting the scene, or the director needs to line up a shot. They just put that headset on, or they look up at the monitor, and all of a sudden they're able to see in real time what everything looks like, which is something you couldn't envision before.
That's right.
And, you're not having, the original Star Wars, obviously, you're not having to fly to Tanzania to do it. All of a sudden you're doing it on, an LED stage, or, in a motion capture, either studio or inertial system. I mean, I've done motion capture out in the back parking lot of a studio before, and then it was pumped into an indie game. So yeah.
It's unbelievable what's happening.
Crazy.
The idea of taking the handheld, the game controller, and taping it to your camera,
Yeah.
and just letting the camera motions be recorded.
Yeah.
Allows you to basically shoot anything, anytime, anywhere. And you don't need to put dots on the green screen or anything, because all of that can be controlled with these free programs.
Oh, and that's the other big thing is like Unreal and Unity, which are the big game engines that process this. They've all got their software free, or not free to use, but they've got it available to use. They've got student packages and indie packages, and they really do try to make it affordable. If you're a big studio going in to use them, they're going to charge you a little bit more, but they also have scholarships. It's quite amazing. And that's something that really makes me happy, is that we live in an industry where so much of the work we do is NDA and proprietary, and you don't want the other person to know what you're doing, and to have some of these companies come out and just be like, we're all artists, let's move the needle forward a little bit, and let's make some art. Yeah.
So this obviously puts everybody in an interesting position. Now, the volumetric stages are still fairly unique. They're still pretty expensive to get into.
Yeah, I think each one of those cameras, like a OptiTrack camera system, I think each camera is either $2,000 to $5,000 a camera.
Yeah, so it's still no joke.
No, not at
all.
We're
talking about $2,000 to $5,000 a
per
camera.
camera, and studios. I would say a traditional studio probably has anywhere from 32 to 50 cameras. So yeah, no joke.
Yeah, for less than the price of one camera a few years ago.
That's true.
Pretty sick.
True. Yeah,
unbelievable. So I think this is a moment. A very fascinating moment, a very scary moment. I mean, we're all scared of the little guy, right? We're all scared that somehow it's going to become so easy. And I'm always reminding myself of that Word Perfect story, which is, it helps to have a quiet room. It helps to, one of the things that makes a better quality microphone from a worse quality microphone is not the audio quality under normal conditions.
Right.
It's the audio quality under special conditions, when things are way too loud or way too soft, or but under a normal condition, it's acceptable.
Right.
And very hard to tell the difference, even from the cost of a $100 microphone to a $4,000 microphone. But this feels a little different to me. This feels like, we've heard that on some of these volumetric stages, of which we don't own one.
Right.
Mandalorian, however, being right over there, Avatar being next door. On the days where they're not working, they could rent the studio to a car company that wants to drive a car up a mountain and put it on the top of a mountain in the middle of the desert. And they're able to do it live.
Yep. Fonco Studios. It's a studio I used to work at. It's kind of it's a production studio. It's got a lot of different companies within there, and that's where Noidum got their first LA stage, was right there. And that's something that they do all the time. They started off as just a way to sell the product, but then it's like, well, we've got all this equipment, let's just start advertising. And yeah, it's like, well, if it's not being used for a shoot or something like that, rent it out, come in, use it. Because especially with big productions, you're going to have a lot of downtime, and there's no sense just letting it sit there, idle for no reason. And
Right.
yeah.
I mean, it's important to draw the attention, I think, to 2 YouTube videos that are out there on this, because they could be done in small studios with a green screen. One of them being the Corona commercial, where the camera dollies forward, and the perspective changes, and everything comes forward, and you see the lounge chairs and everything else, and the rest of it is not there.
Yeah.
Or in that particular case, I think is volumetric. Is there, but it's on screens. But all of that that parallax is built into the way that the game engine was designed, the program was designed, and so it recorded the dolly in, and it everything else kind of happened. And the other one is somebody on a treadmill who's walking, and the airport moves.
Oh yeah, it just
and so they're walking through the entire airport.
Yeah.
And all they are is on a treadmill.
Yeah, travels with you.
Incredible stuff.
And then the thing is like, we, those of us of an age were born before this technology was even a thing. But now, the current generation, your Gen Zers, your Gen Alpha, I don't know, whatever the latest generation is, it's like they're taking coding classes in elementary school. So they've had an iPhone in their hand, since they were infants. So they're already learning this technology at a young age to already, I live with 2 animators, and it's like watching the stuff that they do digitally is just, it's amazing to see. And it's just like second nature for them. So it's like, you've got this whole generation of people coming up who are already, before they even look at like advanced degrees or anything like that, already have a baseline understanding of how to do a lot of this technology that was cutting edge back, when we were younger, which is really crazy to think about, that the iPhone is now being used for films, whereas back in the day, we had like, what was it? The little cheap cameras that you click it and you roll the film, and then you have to take it to the drugstore and they produce it and you get it 2 weeks later. It's like, well, now, now it's on social media 2 seconds later, and, for better or worse on that. But, but to your point, it still takes an artist to take this technology, to take this, equipment and make something of note with it.
Right.
You can have obviously Taika Waititi's working on Thor and Marvel films now, and now Star Wars in the future. But if you go back and look at like What We Did in the Shadows, his original film, the TV show's amazing as well. It's like, I don't know what the budget was on that, but it could not have been great. But it is a fantastic show because he is a storyteller.
Right.
So he was able to do that on next to nothing. And then you give him Marvel budget and technology, and look what he can do. And same thing with Peter Jackson. You look at his old school horror movies that he did in Australia, and it's just like and like he was doing crazy things with puppets. And then all of a sudden you give him Lord of the Rings, and it's like, he's still able to tell stories regardless of how much money and equipment that he has.
Yeah. Well, the mindset also is that the technology can so easily get in the way.
Well, and this is the other thing. And that's what, that was one of the big critiques with love it or hate it, the original, the prequels, 1 through 3, Star Wars prequels 1 through 3, is that one of the big critiques is it was using VFX to make up for the fact that the storytelling was just not as solid. Those of us who grew up on the original Star Wars loved it so much. We didn't care that he was doing it with miniatures and everything. It was a great story to follow. And so sometimes I think people do try to use the big explosions and the shiny CGI to make up and be like, well, the audience isn't going to get, or they're just going to be so entranced by the CGI. Yeah. And I mean, it was beautiful to watch those Star Wars movies, but I will still argue that I will take episodes 4 through 6 any day.
Yeah, well, they're not. CGI is not fun to watch if there's no story. And
exactly.
So when I first started out practicing law, and was interacting with people in the record business and things like that, and you'd get these demos in, and some of them were many of them were overproduced.
Oh yeah.
And the idea was to try to hear the song. And because a great song is a great song, which can be produced 1,000 different ways. A great story is a great story and can be produced 1,000 different ways.
Absolutely.
But if it's not a great story, it can't be produced.
Right.
A great something that's not a great song, I guess, can be produced. I've heard a lot of great songs.
I mean,
that
you
were
got
actually bad songs.
auto-tune and you throw a bass line behind it.
Yeah, just a great drummer can sometimes mask the fact that the song is nonsensical. But certainly, in when you start turning cameras on, you better have a story to tell.
Yeah.
And I actually feel the same way. I'm a little tongue in cheek. A great song is still a great song.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that the technology can so easily confuse us. But the gift of giving this technology to people for essentially no cost.
Right.
We're talking about a free program. We're talking about a nearly, just a several $100, game controller.
Yep.
Can record the movements of the camera and So here's what my philosophy in the studio is to know everything.
Yeah.
Not to necessarily be great at everything,
right,
but to know and understand where the limit is and to know what could be done. It almost is unfortunate for people who are, especially in this day and age, to not know the capabilities of a Blender, which is a free 3D software and amazing animation software, but it's free and it's not that hard to use. And there are about 1 million tutorials out there.
Oh, so many tutorials.
Same thing with Real or Unity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tons of tutorials, sample projects.
I mean, you can make your own project from home. I'm trying to think of, there's an example of a couple animation students put together during COVID. They put together what was it called? God, I suck at names. But they put together, this short little YouTube video, and I think it took them 2 years to do it, but they did it with, the Unreal Engine. Of course, they were artists and they had a story to tell. Hired, some voice actors. I think they found him on Twitter. A hell of a boss. And next thing you know, now these guys are repped by CAA and, have first look deals with whatever studios because they did it themselves. And, that's the one big thing you hear in this industry all the time is like, well, don't wait for the work, make the work, and that's always, it's kind of hit or miss because it's like, well, at the end of the day, there's still gatekeepers and, how do you get in front of those execs? But, you hear of people being discovered on YouTube and TikTok making just these short little vignettes with the technology that they have available. But like you said, they are artists. They had the skills to create the characters. They had the ability to write the scripts, to tell these stories. It wasn't just like, look at these cool characters, I will say on the flip side of that though, one of the things that is of a concern from a performance standpoint within the industry right now is AI technology and the ability to replicate voices and train AI to replicate voices, and the same thing kind of with deepfakes. And, so now the fear, especially within the voiceover industry, is like, oh, well, are we going to become obsolete? Because now you have more in the e-learning era, a category right now, but you see it popping up elsewhere, is that, oh, we're now teaching computers to perform. So where does that leave the performer? Because now the technology is becoming the actor. And, an example of this was The Mandalorian this past season with Mark Hamill's appearance. Obviously, that was CGI him, but his voice was also AI. And I don't, to this day, understand why they did that. Disney, I'd love to know why they didn't just record Mark and then auto-tune him or whatever. But no, that was an AI program that took samples of what Mark's voice was like in the original trilogy, processed it into this performance. And when you listen to it, you can tell like there's just something off, just like, the uncanny valley. When you look at some of those CGI humans, you're like, it's just not quite out.
Almost.
But how long is it going to take before that technology is like pretty convincing, and then where does that leave the performer?
I think so.
That's
I'm going to move the cart back to where
I know.
we
I was like,
started.
I noticed.
It's
I was
kind of
like,
moving forward and forward.
There's no breaks.
But I'll tell you, it's Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer in Maverick.
Yes.
Top Gun.
Yep.
He the whole voice is CGI.
Yep.
There's so many stories now. Carrie Fisher and her appearances now, Star Wars and stuff like that. I mean, it's magic what's happening.
Yeah.
And then holograms on stage. I guess I'm not as afraid of it. It's easy to joke about technology being democratized to the point where none of us have work.
Right.
Uh,
I like to think we're still needed.
I think we're still needed, and we've always been afraid of technology through all of history.
This is very true.
We've always been afraid of robots taking away people's jobs. Right now, we can't find enough people to take the jobs. We've always been afraid of the unknown.
Yeah.
When in fact, a lot of the time, what we end up doing is adapting and realizing that great story still wins.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I guess with that said, we've covered a topic.
I think we have covered a topic. Yeah. So all you indie filmmakers and game developers and everything, go get your free technology and make something awesome. Make the next Overwatch or the next, I don't know, what was another low budget film that, Parasite. Though I think that had a budget though. But anyways.
Yeah.
Make art.
Make art. All right. It has been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking some time with the studio life today.
Thanks for being here. It's a lovely studio.
And so that's it for us today. Keep watching. How was that?
It was good.
All right.
All right, that was a good run through. You guys ready to do it?
Great. Let's back to one.
All right.
That's great. Thanks.
Hit the record button.
3,